Do you like Dominion? How about Magic the Gathering? If you do, Ascension is a game that you should definitely play. It's made by someone who's a professional Magic the Gathering player, played a lot of Dominion, and this feels like the natural progression of the deck building genre. So Dominion was the first. This feels like it's just expanding on the idea, not hugely, but enough to be unique and to have its own style and own feeling. Now, when you're playing 1v1, I think that's my preferred way to play Ascension. You can definitely play with more players, but I just love the feeling that I get when I'm playing 1v1. It feels like an absolute race. It feels like you're actually getting to use a lot of strategy because, you know, there's this shared board where you're pulling cards off of, and in a multiplayer game, it's harder and harder with more and more players to kind of plan your turns ahead. So you know what you're gonna do with your cards, but sometimes if you're buying something, if you're attacking a monster, if that board changes too much, it's hard to plan ahead too far. But 1v1, you're blocking, you're attacking, you're planning. It's such a great experience, and it's so much fun to try different strategies because there's like different ways to go about building decks, comboing with two different types of cards, or going for one specific set with support of another, or one or three or whatever. It's such a fun game, and so I think what it does well. It adds something to the deck building genre without going overboard. And it's delivered in a way that is really enjoyable for people who already love games like Dominion. Let's take a look. And they certainly had in mind the expansions when they built this box. Oh, a little damage here. All right, so it's set up here. Each person gets their own deck of cards. You just start with 2 militia, which you use to punch enemies, and 8 apprentices. So this is your currency, essentially. You shuffle your deck, you draw 5 cards, you look at what you have, and then decide on what you want to do. And one of the differences that you can see right away is that each of these cards have a little star with a number. So at the end of the game, in the bottom left corner, you'll be counting up how much points you have, and every card, nearly every card at least, has a point value associated with it. So that's one difference from a game like Dominion, where there's specific point cards, there's specific action cards. A lot of these cards do a lot of the same things. So one way you get points is through the cards in your deck. Another is these. This is the honor pool. These are also points. A red crystal is 5, a white one is 1. You primarily get these through defeating enemies. You can see an example of the cultist. Takes 2 military to punch the cultist, and you get 1 crystal as a reward. It goes into the void. Now, as the game progresses, there'll be other monsters that take different amounts of fighting to defeat. When you defeat them, you get the reward right away. They don't go into your deck. So there's 2 different things that you're doing. You're buying cards to add to your deck, or you're fighting monsters to get the reward right away and not add them to your deck. So it's an interesting thing. But the game is so simple. It's got this 2 resource management style games. Resource management in terms of you can get these resources or you can get the military fighting power, and you're trying to balance that through all sorts of stuff. There's also some loose factions in the game, and you can see them shown through the colors. So you've got the Mechana, which is the brown. So typically those work well together. You've got blue, which is the enlightened. You've got purple, which is the void. Void is fighting. Enlightened's more card draw. Mechana's playing cards and comboing into other Mechanas. And there is another, the Lifebound. They get a lot of room, a lot of the resources to buy more things and combo into each other as well. And so There's no requirement for each of them, but they kind of work well together. And so throughout the game, you're building your deck and doing more things that, you're not limited by one action a turn. You're not limited by doing one thing. You're just limited by what you have available in your hand. So if you have 4 here, you can buy a 1 costed card, a 2 costed card, another 1 cost, and punch for 1. There's nothing I can punch for 1, so I don't do that. And so you're replacing these whenever people buy stuff. So I'll just play through a few rounds, show you what can happen. I'm seeing a lot of Mechana, so maybe I'll go for that. So I'll buy a reactor. Can't punch anything for 1. For 4, I'll buy this. All right, so I play a Rocket Courier. It stays outside because it's a construct and continues to do this thing. It says once per turn, when you acquire another construct, you may put it under play in your control. So normally you have to wait till it comes into your hand, play it, and then you go forward. So I'm going to play Reactor. So I have 2, 4. So this only costs 2. So once per turn, when you acquire another construct, you may put it under my control. So I do that. When you put this or another into play, draw a card. So draw a card. This Spike Vixen seems pretty good. Buy that for 2. And then I'll punch the Cultist for 1, gaining a point. Alright, I play this construct. Once per turn, gain 2. Play this Enlightened Hero to draw a card. I've got 5. This and this. Draw a card. Banish something from the center row. Ooh, this is looking great. So I'm gonna play a Reactor Monk. I get 2, pay 1 less to acquire constructs. I also get 2 to spend on constructs, so this is 5. So I have 4. It's discounted. I can put it into play right now because of this one. Since I put it into play, I draw a card. Once per turn, I can gain 1 to spend on other Mechana constructs. I use 2 to punch the Cultist to gain 1, and with my 3, I'll buy this Wolf Shaman. Now you're kind of getting the idea of the game. There's some strategy, there's some combo building, there's some engine building as well. There's just a lot of fun in this game. If you like deck building games, if you like games with a lot of strategy and some outplaying of your opponent, this is worth playing. This is worth having a copy of. And I think if you have Dominion or other deck builders, this is still worth buying and getting if you like Magic, if you like deck building. I like both. I like this a lot. Having played a little bit, want to go and play with someone else. I have a friend that we used to play this a lot last year, and we got to the point where we could play games in under like 6 or 7 minutes, like entire games, because we were flying through the decks. We have ideas in mind, seeing what we have. We're just deep into strategy. We know all the cards. It's so much fun. So that's what I think of Ascension. It's great.